"You're not worth it," he sneered, then proposed to my sister at our family barbecue. Applause, fake tears. I uploaded the video, exposed their lies. Wedding canceled. Revenge served cold. Hi there, my name is Juliet Lawson, and I never imagined I would be standing here sharing my story. Life has a funny way of changing everything you think you know, and let me tell you, it hit me hard. I was engaged to a man I thought I could trust, but everything came crashing down when I discovered his betrayal. My own sister. My fiancée. A secret that shattered my world. But instead of giving up, I decided to take control, to show them that they couldn't break me. This story isn't just about revenge, it's about reclaiming your life and your dignity. Stick around to see how I turned my heartbreak into empowerment. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. And while you're here, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button. It'll give me the motivation to keep bringing you more powerful stories like this one. The air was thick with tension at the family reunion. The clinking of wine glasses, the muffled laughter, and the smell of barbecue filled the air, but for me, none of it mattered. Because nothing was the same anymore. And I knew at the moment I opened my sister's phone. My name is Juliet Lawson, and I never thought I'd be the one to discover the truth behind my shattered life. For 4 years, I had been with Ethan King, my fiancé, a man who seemed like everything I needed. He was reliable, predictable, and always there when I needed him. Or so I thought. It all started at the reunion. The night was supposed to be perfect, a family gathering where we could all celebrate together. Instead, I found myself standing alone, surrounded by the laughter and celebration, realizing that my entire world was about to implode. As I walked back to our shared room to grab my phone charger, I noticed something odd. Sophia, my younger sister, had left her phone behind. Normally, I wouldn't care, but that night, something urged me to pick it up. It wasn't out of malice. It was a gut feeling that something wasn't right. I unlocked her phone. Her password was set to a simple birthday, one I had never thought to question. But what I found shook me to my core. The messages between Ethan and Sophia were right there, staring at me. Words I couldn't believe. They were more than flirtations, they were confessions. They had been having an affair for months, planning to surprise me at the family reunion with a public announcement. They were going to humiliate me in front of everyone. My own sister. Every moment with her feels wrong, Ethan had texted, but I can't stop thinking about how perfect we are together. I dropped the phone. My hands were trembling. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. What I felt was numbness, pure, cold numbness. The realization hit me like a freight train. Everything I had believed in was a lie. I couldn't let them know I had found out. I needed to think. I needed to plan. That night, I kept my composure. I pretended everything was fine, smiled at my family, and congratulated them on their achievements. Everyone was talking about the trip to Paris my cousin had just taken, my brother's promotion at work, and all the usual family gossip. But with every word that passed between us, I felt myself drifting farther away. Their conversations seemed distant, like they were happening in another world entirely. Ethan's whispers behind my back, Sophia's fake concern, it was all starting to feel like a cruel play in which I was the punchline. And I couldn't be more disgusted. As I moved through the evening, I tried to remain engaged. I nodded when someone addressed me, laughed at a joke I didn't hear, even commented on my brother's new jacket. But inside, everything was unraveling. I could feel the tension bubbling beneath the surface of my skin. Ethan and Sophia, the two people I had trusted most, had shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. But no, I wouldn't let them know I was onto them. Not yet. The night stretched on, but I felt like I was trapped in a loop. The conversations were pointless, the smiles fake, and the clinking of glasses in celebration was like nails on a chalkboard. I had to hold it together. I couldn't break, not yet. Not until the time was right. By the time everyone went to bed, I had already formulated a plan. I wasn't going to confront them. That would have been too easy. I would let them believe they were getting away with it. I would make sure they felt every ounce of betrayal I had felt, every ounce of hurt. But I would do it on my own terms, in a way that would make them regret ever thinking they could get away with this. After all, they had underestimated me. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought they could just slide by and slip into their little world while mine crumbled. Well, it wasn't going to happen. Not if I had anything to say about it. I went in my room, shutting the door softly behind me. I could hear the sounds of my family talking in the distance, but for once I wanted to be alone. I took a deep breath and stared at my phone. The screen glowed softly in the dim light of the room, a constant reminder of the world I was about to tear apart. Sophia's phone sat on my desk, still buzzing with notifications. I had already gone through it once, but now it was time to dive deeper. To pick apart the threads of their betrayal one by one. I unlocked it with ease. Sophia had always been careless with her passwords, thinking I wouldn't suspect anything. As I scrolled through her messages, I felt my heart hammer in my chest. It was like finding a needle in a haystack, but once you knew what you were looking for, the pieces began to fall into place. There it was. Ethan's name popping up in the messages, one after another. Each conversation more intimate than the last, more revealing. They had been meeting secretly for months, planning their affair like it was some sort of secret love story. I took screenshots. One by one. The messages where Ethan promised her he would leave me, the ones where they talked about their future together, the ones where they joked about how easy it was to deceive me. My fingers moved quickly, typing my email address and sending them to myself, just in case Sophia tried to delete them. When I finished, I felt a strange calm wash over me. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was focused, calculated, and this was only the beginning. Next, I turned to Ethan's bank statements. I knew he had been spending money like it was water, but I hadn't realized just how deep it went. Fancy dinners at expensive restaurants, hotels in the city, and late-night calls to reserve places for two. All paid for with the credit cards I thought we shared. My blood boiled as I looked at the charges, each one feeling like a slap in the face. But I didn't rush to confront him. Not yet. I wasn't done. I took screenshots of everything. I saved them meticulously, each charge, each dinner, each hotel reservation. These weren't just receipts. They were evidence. Cold, hard proof of what I had already suspected. Of what they thought they could get away with. But they didn't realize I was already a step ahead. Once I had everything I needed, I reached out to Lauren, my best friend. She had been with me through thick and thin, and I knew she would help me without asking questions. Lauren had always been the one I turned to in times of crisis. She had a sharp mind, a calm demeanor, and she wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty when necessary. I knew I needed her help more than ever. It was time to put my plan into motion. We met the next day for coffee, and I told her everything. I didn't leave out a single detail. When I finished, she didn't say anything for a long time. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, weighing the situation, thinking about what needed to be done. Then she spoke, her voice calm but firm. We need to install hidden cameras around the house. We'll catch them in the act, and when they know the truth is out, they'll have nowhere to run. We'll make sure they can't deny it. I felt a rush of relief. Lauren knew exactly what to do. She had always been the one with the practical solutions. She was the one who would help me make sure this wasn't just a moment of fleeting anger. This was a carefully calculated plan, and we were going to execute it perfectly. The next few days were a whirlwind. Lauren helped me track Ethan's movements. We installed 2 hidden cameras in the living room and 1 more in the hallway, hidden in plain sight as a smoke detector. I knew Ethan would never think to look there. And if Sophia ever tried to deny it, the cameras would tell the whole story. We spent hours monitoring the feeds, catching glimpses of Ethan and Sophia coming and going, talking and laughing together. They had no idea I was watching. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, but there was still more to do. This was just the groundwork. That day, I did more than just prepare for their public downfall. I was building something. A plan so intricate, so well thought out that even if they tried to deny it, I would have all the evidence I needed. And I would make sure they never forgot it. The time for confrontation would come, but it would be on my terms. As I sat in front of the camera feeds that night, watching Ethan pacing through the living room, I realized something. I wasn't just preparing for revenge. I was preparing to take back my life. To remind myself that I had power, that I wasn't the one being deceived anymore. I was in control. And in the end, they would be the ones who paid the price for their lies. It was only a matter of time. Hey! Are you finding the story interesting so far? If you are, make sure to subscribe to the channel so we can continue the adventure together. The best part is just ahead. The next few weeks felt like I was living in a haze. Every dinner with Ethan, every phone call with Sophia, all felt rehearsed. I could see through their acts like they were transparent. And yet they didn't have the slightest idea that I knew everything. They thought I didn't notice their hidden glances or their uncomfortable silences. But in reality, I was reading every movement, every word, every nuance. The game they were playing was childish, and I had already mapped out my next move. I just needed the perfect moment to show them that I had been in control all along. It was like living in a parallel universe, one where I had to wear a mask to keep up appearances. At work, at family dinners, even at casual meetups with friends, everything felt like a show. The only difference was, I was no longer just a participant. I was the one pulling the strings, making sure they danced to the tune I played, all while they thought they were in charge. The family reunion was coming up, and they had no idea what was waiting for them. It would be the perfect setting to bring everything to light. A family gathering, full of people who had no idea about the cracks forming in the foundation of my life. They'd be there to witness the unmasking, and all the while, Ethan and Sophia would be blissfully unaware, believing their little act would go unnoticed. As the days passed, I continued to play my part. I joined in on the laughter, faked my smiles, and even laughed at their jokes. But inside, I was already several steps ahead, carefully planning every detail, making sure nothing was left to chance. It wasn't just about catching them, it was about control. It was about making them feel the weight of their betrayal in a way they would never forget. I had installed the cameras without raising any suspicion. The placement was perfect. The living room camera was tucked behind a vase, the angle just right to capture the intimate conversations they thought no one would hear. The hallway camera was discreet, disguised as a smoke detector, and the other, strategically hidden in the kitchen, aimed to capture any unguarded moment between them. My phone was synced to the app, and I could monitor everything in real time from the comfort of my room, watching them slowly unravel without them knowing I was observing. Sophia was starting to feel the pressure. Her perfect little world was beginning to crack. She had been overly cautious in recent days, avoiding my gaze or hurriedly changing the subject when I asked about her plans for the weekend. She could feel that something was off. I didn't need to confront her to know that. Every time she spoke to me, there was a hint of guilt in her voice. She tried to mask it, but I knew her too well. Ethan, on the other hand, was starting to get nervous. I could see the signs. He began canceling our dates more frequently, pretending to be busy with work, which was a load of crap. I knew all about his late-night meetings with clients and the hours he was spending away from home. He thought he was slick, but I had already caught him in too many lies to believe his excuses. And it wasn't just the cancellations. It was the little things. The way he'd glance at his phone with a look of panic in his eyes when it buzzed, or the way his hands shook just a little when he reached for his coffee. The more nervous he became, the more I knew he was getting closer to the edge. I wasn't the only one who was getting anxious. They had been planning something big, something that would turn my world upside down. Their grand scheme, the public proposal. They were going to do it at the family reunion in front of everyone, knowing I'd be blindsided. Ethan had no idea that I had already prepared for this moment, that I was the one in control. He thought it would be a beautiful moment, an emotional proposal with everyone cheering them on. But what he didn't know was that this was the moment that would be his downfall. I waited for the day to arrive. The moment I had been preparing for was finally here. The cameras were set, my plan in motion, and I could feel the familiar rush of adrenaline. I was ready. The timing had to be perfect, and everything had to fall into place just as I had envisioned. I wasn't going to let anything slip. The day of the barbecue, I arrived early to help set up. It was the perfect opportunity to stay one step ahead. Ethan and Sophia were already there, just like I knew they would be. They were both trying their hardest to act casual, but their nervousness was palpable. I watched as they smiled at each other when they thought no one was looking. Their smiles were so carefully crafted, like a bad performance. They thought no one could see through them, but I could see every crack in their act. I helped with the tables, arranged the plates, and set the drinks up just as I had been asked. All the while, I was watching them from the corner of my eye, carefully observing every little movement, every shift in their behavior. They were nervous, I could tell. Their fake smiles, their forced laughter. It was all starting to unravel. Ethan kept glancing around the room, checking the time on his watch like he was waiting for something to happen. Sophia, on the other hand, was busy adjusting her hair and checking her phone every few minutes. I knew she was hoping for a text from Ethan. She was probably wondering if everything was still on track. They both thought they were in control, but I had already won. I played my part perfectly, pretending nothing was wrong, giving them just enough room to think they could pull off their plan. And just as I had expected, they began to move closer to their goal. Ethan stepped up to my father, giving him a handshake that looked more like a nervous tick than anything else. I could see his nerves were getting the best of him. The barbecue was starting to fill with people, and the time was getting closer. I took a moment to step outside, just long enough to check the footage from the cameras. They were still where I had left them, completely unaware of the trap I had set. I let out a breath, feeling a wave of satisfaction. This was it. This was the moment I had prepared for. Everything came down to this moment. The cameras had recorded every word, every touch, every betrayal. They had no idea I had all the evidence. They thought they had been clever, well, clever enough to keep their affair hidden, but what they didn't know was that I had been watching. From the beginning, I knew. It wasn't just about catching them in the act, it was about making them feel the weight of their actions. It was about holding them accountable not in the private spaces they had controlled, but in front of the people they tried to deceive. As the barbecue got into full swing, I played my role perfectly. I laughed at jokes, helped serve food, and even took a few pictures of family members enjoying the party. My laughter was real, at least the parts where I wasn't thinking about what was about to happen. I smiled and chatted with the relatives, keeping my composure, but all the while I was preparing. The camera feeds were still open on my phone, the little blips of notifications confirming that everything was exactly where it needed to be. No one knew what I was about to do. The air was thick with chatter, and I could feel it. The relaxed energy, the sound of the grill sizzling, the children running around with their ice cream, everything seemed perfect. But I knew that everything was about to change, that this was the final piece of the puzzle. And I was ready for it. It wasn't just about exposing Ethan and Sophia, it was about showing my family what kind of people they really were. About showing them how easily they could betray me, how casually they destroyed trust and relationships. The facade had lasted long enough. Now it was time for them to face the music. Finally, it was time. The moment was fast approaching, and I could feel the anticipation building in my chest. Ethan and Sophia had been eyeing each other across the backyard, exchanging small glances and hidden smiles. They were oblivious, thinking they had pulled off the perfect act. Their plan to propose in front of the whole family, to make it a grand, romantic spectacle, seemed so perfect to them until they didn't realize they were being filmed the whole time. Ethan, nervous and pale, stood up from his seat. The backyard suddenly grew quieter, the noise fading into the background as all eyes turned to him. His hand found Sophia's, and I could see the slight tremble in his fingers. He took a deep breath, the kind of breath someone takes before doing something they think will be life-changing. I could see his nerves, but I didn't feel bad for him. Not anymore. Not after everything. He looked at Sophia, his face a picture of false confidence, and began to speak. "Sophia," he started, his voice trembling slightly. "You are everything I've ever wanted. Will you marry me?" Sophia gasped, but it wasn't the gasp of surprise, it was rehearsed. I could tell. The way she brought her hands to her face, the dramatic pause, the way her voice cracked just enough to make it seem like she was overcome with emotion, it was all so fake. Her tears, too, were a performance, just like everything else. She threw her arms around him, whispering a yes, loud enough for everyone to hear. The applause followed immediately, a mixture of excitement and support from the family. But I didn't clap. I didn't move. I just stood there, my eyes locked on them, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me like a storm cloud. Instead of reacting, I reached into my pocket slowly, pulled out my phone, and unlocked it. The app was already open, the group chat in full view. I could see the family members already buzzing with excitement. In that split second, I paused, taking in the sight of Ethan and Sophia basking in their false glory. I took a breath, exhaled slowly, and without hesitation, I uploaded the video. The message was clear. Within seconds, the video played on every device in the group chat. Ethan and Sophia's betrayal, in all its glory, was now public. There was no denying it. Every text message, every hotel reservation, every whisper shared in secret, it was all there. The world they'd built was now shattered. For a split second, everything froze. The room went silent. The applause died down as people began to look at their phones, processing the video. I watched as the realization hit Ethan first, his face drained of color as his eyes flicked to the screen. Then, Sophia's smile faltered. The tears, the joy, the facade, it all cracked in an instant. I could see their panic rising as they both checked their phones, their faces a mixture of confusion and disbelief. My parents stared at me, their eyes wide with shock, and then they turned their gaze to the video. My father's brow furrowed, his hands clenched into fists. He stepped forward, his face filled with fury, his jaw tight, but before he could say anything, I gave a small shake of my head. I didn't need him to step in. This wasn't his fight. "Congratulations," I said calmly, my voice carrying over the stunned silence. "You two deserve each other." The words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. My statement was simple, but it was enough. Ethan and Sophia, for all their planning and deceit, had no words left. There was nothing they could say. They couldn't deny the evidence. They couldn't turn this back into their perfect moment. The room was still, everyone uncertain about how to react. My parents exchanged glances, their faces a mix of confusion and anger, but no one moved. No one knew what to say in the face of this public humiliation. The video had done its job, the truth was out, and there was no going back. Sophia's face twisted with frustration, and she opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Ethan's gaze shifted to the floor, his fingers trembling as he put his phone down. They had no way out now. They could try to explain, to cover their tracks, but it was too late. The damage was done. I turned to leave, walking past the stunned guests and towards the door. There was nothing more to say. The moment had been perfect, every detail had played out exactly as I had planned. They had thought they could get away with it. But now they were exposed. And they would never forget this moment. I left the barbecue without saying another word. I didn't need to. They were ruined, and I had the satisfaction of knowing that I had made them pay for every lie, every betrayal. The next few weeks were a blur. Ethan and Sophia tried to reach out to me, but I had no intention of listening. My life, as I knew it, was over. But in a strange way, it felt like a rebirth. I took some time off, flew to Santorini, and stayed in a small villa overlooking the caldera. The beauty of the place made me realize that I had the power to rebuild my life. Lauren was the only one I stayed in touch with, but even then, I kept my distance. I started working on my career, applying for freelance opportunities and traveling when I could. I no longer needed Ethan. I no longer needed Sophia. I had myself, and that was all I needed. A year later, I sat at a cafe, watching the sunset over the sea, a glass of local wine in hand. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "We heard what happened. Your father is still upset, but we understand. You've become a new person." And in that moment, I realized that the revenge I had taken was not just for me. It was for the woman I had become. The one who was no longer bound by the past, but was instead free to live her life on her own terms.